I wasn't sure what to expect with Dark Gathering, but I have to say this is some peak horror anime right here. It is silly, but it's legitimately terrifying with how it handles the atmosphere and rather than jump scares, uses such freaky imagery and ghost stories to really get under your skin. You have 3 characters that are all equally twisted in their own way. A girl with a stuffed animal which she stuffs souls into and lets other souls rip apart and survival of the fittest. You have a boy who pretends to not want to be a part of it but has the most psycho smiles at the face of danger, and the girl chaperoning them all. I mean, she's one step away from stabbing you in the back as she kisses you on your cheek. Dark Gathering is a must-watch horror anime this summer season. Full live reaction episode 1 available on my Patreon if you do want to see my uncut live reaction hype. I was blown away by this episode personally, so consider supporting if you would like to see that. I've been excited for this one. I've heard some good things about the source material, but I was going in cautiously optimistic. The 2 shows that I was cautiously optimistic about, I think more than most, was Undead Murder Farce and Dark Gathering, both of which I thought were kind of approaching things differently than what you typically see between a monster storytelling and a ghost storytelling standpoint. And I'm so happy both of them delivered, but I will give the edge to Dark Gathering right now because this was different than I was expecting. I can nitpick a couple of things, like the main character, he kind of reminds me character design wise of something pulled from like School Days, so that was a little bit of an adjustment for me. And I think in general, this episode just kind of fit the right tone it wanted to. Like the first couple of minutes were a little more goofy than I was expecting, and I was like, okay, maybe this isn't going to be exactly what I was hoping for. But around the point that he goes to the home to be a tutor for this little psycho girl, the humor found its footing, and I'm really happy that I didn't take the entire episode to find the balance of silly meets terrifying, because outside of the first couple of minutes of the episode, I mean, really, I think the blend works, and I'm usually a little more critical on the kind of comedy horror mixture because I find like the juxtaposition just doesn't really work. That back and forth, you got to commit to one or the other, and honestly usually I just don't find it funny. But when she pulls out that phone and basically when he's like wanting nothing to do with her and she pretends to call, or actually does call, saying that my tutor wants to know about my cute panties, I was laughing pretty hard. I was like, okay, they're gonna have some fun. And I like the idea of this, like, he seems so normal compared to these two, like this, you know, oh hey, this is my cousin, she has 2 pupils in each eye, it's no big deal. Oh, she's a bit of a weirdo, yeah, it's okay, let's go for a joyride. And then he seems so normal, but by the end of the episode you realize he's just as twisted as any of the others there, and the idea of how they're hunting spirits is kind of interesting, because at first I thought it was a bit of a letdown when I saw her just smash the phone. I was like, oh, you know, we have a haunted phone booth where basically this woman got absolutely obliterated, and she just comes in and smashes it. I was like, okay, well, why didn't she just do that the first time? That's kind of a lame way to deal with it. But when you see the reason of those stuffies, everything makes so much more sense, and I came out appreciating it so much more. Because she starts off by strangling this bunny, and the bunny seemed alive. I was like, okay, she has a possessed stuffed animal. But then she tosses it in the phone booth, and it obliterates and dies. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's that. And we saw her room earlier in the episode, so we knew she had a bunch of them. But the idea of like after cutting the phone apart, and then the idea of like in the car ride she's strangling it, and you see the phone, like the idea of like almost using the stuffed animals as a way to like put the soul she hunts in, and then in her room it's like survival of the fittest. It's like parasites and bugs going at one another, and it's messed up. That's where the horror really comes through. They use a general kind of like goofy atmosphere to make the situations fun and charming or just weird and amusing. But where the horror comes in is the way they just make these ghost stories unnerving. Like when I start seeing this, like you call the phone number too much, the phone gets covered in blood. She had a baggie with a iPhone just covered in blood because she called too much. It is such a ridiculous premise that utilizes horror so well. Great OST, great sound direction, and some really solid spooky faces. But it does have a silly atmosphere a majority of the time, but I honestly think out of all the horror anime I've seen recently that tiptoed the hilarious or goofy or silly with some spooky moments, based on one episode alone, mind you, I think they did a very good job. Now, the first moment of this episode is spooky, and then it cuts to the opening. But really the first moment of seeing him take a picture and he's like goofing off like, oh, there's always a spirit next to me. Yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of that type of atmosphere. I was worried for the first couple of minutes, but like I said, as soon as the cast is formed, he goes to that home and we see these three together. It is fun, it is goofy, but you start really understanding the world at a steady pace. The idea of what happened to this girl, how she lost her family, the idea of having two different eyesights, one of the spirits and one of the normal world, how after the car accident, not only did her IQ double, but her vision went into one so she can see both. And the idea of ghosts and spirits targeting our boy, this little girl being like a psycho hunter, and mommy dearest big cousin's childhood crush who just encourages the psycho behavior. These three are twisted, and they really are. I mean, as much as I want to say, boy, don't stick your dick in crazy, at this point, I feel like he's probably going to be the most twisted of them all. And honestly, I'm here for this one. This is going to be a 25 episode back-to-back 2-core, and hopefully the production can remain strong. I mean, they have a pretty basic art style for the general characters and stuff. Obviously, they went extra hard when it was like the spooky atmosphere, the kind of shadowy dust and everything. But overall, I feel like they probably could manage this one pretty consistent, but obviously only time will tell. I hope this one pops off though, because we don't see a lot of horror anime, and when we do, I don't think they're that great more often than not. Now granted, some are good. Some have been good recent memory, but it's not like it's a genre that gets targeted often, and when it does, I don't feel like a lot of us really talk about it or watch it that intensely, because, you know, it's just kind of whatever. But I think this one's going to be special. I think without a doubt Sundays are going to be the best day of the week for the summer anime season, starting the day off right with Zom 100, going into that Mushoku Tensei greatness, and for me ending it with Dark Gathering. This is like the holy trinity here. It's like the perfect trio, all different vibes and atmospheres, but all feel like they're doing perfect jobs for the type of anime they are. And you love to see it. I mean, if anyone watched my What Will I Watch video, I pretty much said that coming off of last season, I was kind of disappointed because I really thought spring was a perfect anime season for me. And while there was some good shows that I was excited for, I was still thinking it wouldn't live up. And I still don't think as a whole this season is better than last anime season. But days of the week like Sunday, where you do have these three like I just mentioned, make me feel that same level of passion and excitement that I had in the previous anime season, and it makes making videos, whether on Patreon for live reactions or reviews for YouTube, just feel so worth it because it gets a level of passion out of me that a lot of anime don't get. And I really think we have a special day of the week with all three of these, but Dark Gathering and that horror atmosphere. They did something I usually don't praise, but they blended silly meets terrifying very well, and I'm excited to see these three psychos and their ghostly adventures from here. But thoughts, feelings yourself down below, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload more Dark Gathering to the channel, and hey, like I mentioned, full live reaction to this episode is available on my Patreon if you're interested, and while you're there, you'll also get a video shout out. So today we have Alton Johnson, Chawrick, Count Viscount, and LC Yu-Gi-Oh! So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.